The great hall of the Alien Empress glittered with cold silver light. Hundreds of nobles and warriors sat in silence, waiting for their ruler to speak. At the center, on a throne of black stone, the Empress herself watched with sharp golden eyes. Her face was calm, but every person in the room felt her power pressing down on them. No one dared to laugh. No one dared to breathe too loudly. She was the Empress of 1,000 worlds, feared by all. The music of the court orchestra played. But it was not joyful. It was harsh, heavy, and full of fear. Every sound seemed made only to please her. And yet, she did not smile. She sat still, staring ahead, her heart empty like frozen glass. Then, in the corner of the hall, a small figure appeared. A man, a human. His clothes were plain, the kind of clothes worn by a servant. He carried a tray, his steps careful. At his side, holding his hand tightly, walked a little girl. Her legs shook with every step. She tried to move, but her body betrayed her. She was weak, broken. Still, she walked, because her father held her hand. The nobles whispered to each other. A disabled child? Here? Before the Empress? It was an insult. Some expected the guards to drag them away at once, but the Empress raised her hand. The guards froze. Her golden eyes studied the man and his daughter. The man bowed low, whispering to his daughter, giving her courage. The child looked up at the throne, her face pale with fear, yet her eyes shone with hope. The Empress felt something strange inside her chest. A memory, like a ghost, brushed her heart. Once, long ago, she too had a child. But the war had taken that child away. She had buried the memory so deep that even she thought it was gone. But now, looking at this human girl, the pain came alive again. The orchestra finished their song. Silence fell over the hall. Everyone expected the Empress to speak, to punish the human for daring to appear with his weak daughter. Instead, the man did something no one could believe. He turned to his daughter. He knelt down and whispered something in her ear. The girl shook her head, scared. But he smiled at her, warm and gentle, the kind of smile that could melt ice. And then he took her small hands in his and began to move. At first, it was clumsy. The girl's legs trembled. She almost fell. But the man held her, guiding her. Step by step, they began to dance. Slowly, carefully, like a fragile flower swaying in the wind. The hall froze. No one dared speak. The nobles stared with wide eyes. A human, dancing with a disabled child? Before the Empress herself? And yet, it was beautiful. The man spun his daughter gently, his hands never leaving her. Every time she stumbled, he lifted her. Every time she hesitated, he gave her courage. The girl laughed softly, a sound that seemed to echo louder than the whole orchestra. Her face glowed. For the first time in her life, she felt like she could fly. The Empress leaned forward on her throne. Her eyes locked on the scene. She told herself it was weakness, foolishness, nothing more. But her heart pounded harder with every step they took. She could not look away. The nobles whispered nervously. Some wanted to stop it. Some wanted the father executed. But none dared move while the Empress watched. The music in the hall had stopped long ago. But the man and his daughter danced as if the song was still alive in their hearts. Their steps were not perfect. Their movements were slow. But the love between them made every motion shine brighter than fire. The Empress felt heat rise in her chest. She touched her own hand without thinking, feeling the coldness of her skin. She remembered the last time she had held her child's hand. It had been years, decades. The memory hurt more than any blade. Her eyes burned. She blinked, angry at herself. An Empress did not cry. An Empress did not feel. She was steel, she was stone. That was how she ruled her empire. And yet, her heart trembled. The human lifted his daughter high, spinning her carefully. The girl laughed, the sound pure, cutting through the silence of the hall like a sword. For a moment, it seemed the whole galaxy was silent, watching only this dance. The Empress gripped the arms of her throne. Her nails dug into the black stone, her lips parted. She wanted to command them to stop. She wanted to look away, but she couldn't. The dance slowed. The girl leaned against her father's chest, tired but smiling. He whispered something into her ear again, and she nodded, glowing with joy. The Empress's throat felt tight. Something warm slid down her cheek. She touched it with her hand and froze. A tear. She had not shed a tear in years. No one in the hall dared breathe. Every eye was on her now. The strongest, coldest ruler in the galaxy. With a tear running down her face, she whispered to herself, her voice shaking like it had never done before. Why can't I look away? Asterisk, the tear had not gone unnoticed. In the silent hall, 1,000 eyes had seen the single drop fall from the Empress's face. It was unthinkable. The Empress of Iron, the woman who crushed rebellions without mercy, had shown weakness. Whispers spread like fire. The nobles leaned close to each other. The generals frowned. The guards shifted uneasily. Everyone wondered the same thing. What will she do now? The human father held his daughter close, unaware of the danger that hung over him. To him, the dance was only for her. To him, the court, the throne, the Empress, they didn't matter. Only the girl mattered. And that made it even more dangerous. The Empress's golden eyes burned as she rose from her throne. Her long cloak dragged against the floor like the shadow of a storm. The orchestra froze. The whispers died instantly. No one dared to breathe. The girl clutched her father's hand tighter. The human bowed his head low, his heart pounding. He thought this was the end. For daring to dance in front of the Empress, death was certain. The generals stepped forward, eager to carry out her judgment. One of them, with a scar across his cheek, shouted, "Your Majesty, allow us to remove this insult." His hand was already on his blade. The Empress lifted her hand. The hall fell into silence again. Her voice was cold, sharp like glass. "Bring them to me." The human froze. His daughter gasped. Soldiers moved quickly, surrounding them, their heavy boots echoing across the floor. The nobles smirked, already imagining the punishment. They thought the Empress would destroy the human, maybe even in front of everyone, to erase the shame of her tear. The man bowed again, whispering softly to his daughter, "Don't be afraid. Look only at me." But when they stood before the throne, the Empress's eyes were not filled with rage. They were filled with something else, something no one could name. She stepped down from her throne, one slow step at a time. The hall shook with the weight of her presence. No one had seen her leave the throne in years. Not even her generals. She stopped in front of the human. Her eyes pierced him like blades. Her voice was soft, but every word carried the power of command. "Why did you dare dance before me?" The man swallowed, his hands trembling as he held his daughter close. His answer came not from courage, but from truth. "Because she wanted to feel alive," he said. His voice was low, but steady. "Even if only for one song." The words struck the Empress harder than any weapon. "Alive," she repeated the word. In her mind, alive. Did she even know what that meant anymore? Her palace was filled with gold. Her armies covered the stars. Her name brought fear wherever it was spoken. But was she alive? Her eyes shifted to the girl. The child's legs trembled. But she stood proudly beside her father. Her small chest rose and fell quickly, fear battling with courage. Yet her eyes had light. Light that the Empress herself had lost long ago. The Empress's throat tightened. She leaned closer, her golden eyes locked on the girl's face. The nobles held their breath. The generals gripped their swords. Everyone waited for the Empress's judgment, but what she said shocked them all. "Alive?" she whispered, her voice trembling for the first time in years. She turned her gaze to the human father. The air in the hall grew heavy, as if the walls themselves were listening. "Show me what that means." The hall erupted in gasps. The generals looked at each other in disbelief. A servant? A human? Asked to show life itself to the Empress of 1,000 worlds? The man's heart pounded. He did not know if this was a trick or a death sentence in disguise. But his daughter tugged at his sleeve and looked up at him with hopeful eyes, and in that moment he understood. The Empress did not want obedience. She did not want fear. She wanted something she had forgotten. Something. The words of the Empress echoed through the hall. "Show me what that means." No one moved. No one spoke. It was as if time itself had stopped. The generals exchanged dark looks. This was madness. Their Empress, who once ordered cities burned for disobedience, was now asking the human servant to teach her something. The nobles trembled, uncertain if they were witnessing mercy or the beginning of something worse. The human's heart thumped like a war drum. He could feel every eye piercing his back. He knew one wrong move, one wrong word, and his daughter would be dead before his arms could protect her. He tightened his grip on her small hand. She was shaking, her fragile body pressed against him. He bent down and whispered, his lips close to her ear. "No matter what happens, keep your eyes on me. Don't look at them, just me." The girl nodded, though fear filled her wide eyes. Her legs were weak, her chest rose too fast, but she stood as bravely as she could. The soldiers stepped closer, blades at their sides, ready for a single command. The nobles leaned forward, eager to see blood. But the Empress raised her hand, and all fell still, her golden eyes locked on the human. "You say this dance makes her alive. Then show me." Now the man's throat went dry. He wanted to refuse, but he could not. Refusal meant death. Obedience might still mean death. But maybe, just maybe, it was the only chance for his daughter to live. Slowly, trembling, he placed the tray of empty cups aside. His hands then returned to his daughter's shoulders. She looked up at him, confused. "Papa, here?" "Again?" she whispered. "Yes," he said softly. "Here, again, for her." And once more, he took her hands in his and began to move. The hall, vast and cold, became their stage. The nobles watched with disgust. The generals clenched their jaws. Even the guards shifted uneasily. This was not how things were done before the Empress, but the Empress herself. She leaned forward, her golden eyes unblinking, her lips slightly parted. She had asked to be shown what alive meant. Now before her, it was being painted step by step in a fragile dance. The girl stumbled again, her leg nearly giving out. A hiss of mockery came from one corner of the court. A noble smirked, whispering, "Pathetic." The Empress's head snapped in his direction. Her glare burned like fire. The noble froze, his throat dry, his smirk vanishing in terror. No one dared laugh again. The man lifted his daughter, spinning her gently before placing her back on her feet. She laughed a soft, innocent sound, trembling but real. The Empress's heart twisted. The sound clawed at memories she thought she had buried. Once she had heard laughter like that. From her own child, before the war, before the blood, before. She built her throne on bones that her chest tightened. Was this what she had lost? The generals could not bear it any longer. The scarred one stepped forward again, his voice sharp. "Your Majesty, this is weakness. Allow me to silence." The word came like thunder from the Empress's lips. The general stopped instantly. His face drained of color. The Empress rose from her throne again, her cloak sliding across the cold floor. Each step she took made the hall shake. She approached the human and his daughter, the weight of her presence nearly crushing them. The man bowed low, holding his daughter close. His heart screamed at him to protect her, even if it meant his death. But there was no escape. The Empress stopped in front of them, Her eyes were fire. Her voice was quiet, but it was the kind of quiet that made even soldiers sweat. You risked your life for this, she said. Why? The man lifted his head slightly. His voice was soft, but it did not break. Because if she cannot dance, then she is only surviving. And I want her to live. The hall went silent again. No one dared move. The words hung heavy, like a blade above their necks. The Empress's breath caught in her throat. Live. She whispered the word in her mind. She ruled galaxies, but had she ever lived? Her hand trembled as she slowly reached out. The nobles gasped. The generals widened their eyes. No one could believe it. The Empress, who had never touched a servant, never touched a human, never touched anyone without force, was reaching toward the child. The girl froze, too scared to move. The man held his breath, ready to shield her. If it was the end, the Empress's fingers stopped just short of the child's trembling hand. Her voice was low, shaking. Human. Did you steal my heart? Asterisk. The hall was frozen in disbelief. The Empress's golden fingers hovered inches away from the trembling hand of a weak alien child. No one dared to blink. The silence was so sharp it felt like glass about to shatter. The nobles stared, their mouths slightly open. Generals shifted uneasily, their pride bruised. The Empress of 1,000 worlds, who had once burned cities for disobedience, was bending toward a human servant's child. To them this was madness. The child's lips trembled. She looked up at her father for strength. The man gave her a faint nod, though inside, his heart pounded with fear. If the Empress's touch was cruel, the girl would not survive it. Then, slowly like a storm softening into rain, the Empress lowered her hand and let her fingers touch. The girl's small hand on it was warm. The Empress froze. She had not felt warmth like this in years. Her life had been filled with metal, stone, and blood. Her throne was cold. Her crown was heavy. Her people worshipped her with fear, not love. But this tiny hand was different. Fragile, yes. Trembling, yes. But alive. The child gasped softly, then whispered with innocence that cut deeper than any blade. You're not scary, you're sad. The hall shook with silence. The generals stiffened, ready for the Empress's wrath. The nobles prayed they would not be punished for hearing the words, but the Empress did not lash out. Her lips parted, and for the first time in decades, her voice cracked not with rage, but with something softer. Sad. Was that what she had become? Not powerful, not eternal, just sad? The father bowed deeply, pressing his forehead to the cold floor. Forgive her, Majesty. She speaks only with a child's heart. The Empress's eyes stayed locked on the girl. A child's heart, she repeated in a whisper. She thought of her own child gone, stolen by war and time. Her chest tightened until she thought it might break. The girl's fingers curled gently around the Empress's, not out of duty, not out of fear, but out of simple, innocent trust. The Empress's knees weakened. Her throne loomed behind her, cold and distant, but for the first time she did not want it. She wanted this warmth instead. She pulled back slightly, struggling to hold her composure. The court waited for her to explode, to punish, to return to the Empress they all feared. Instead, her voice came out low, trembling, filled with something none of them recognized. Leave us. All of you. The order struck like lightning. The generals hesitated. The nobles glanced at each other nervously. But when her golden eyes flared with a spark of command, they obeyed. The hall emptied, one figure after another, until only the Empress, the human, and the child remained. The silence was no longer heavy with fear. It was fragile, uncertain, like the pause before dawn. The Empress turned back to them. She studied the human father, then the daughter. For the first time in her rule, her words were not calculated, not planned. They were simply, human, do you know what you've done to me? she whispered. The man lowered his head. "No, Majesty, we only danced." The Empress's golden eyes burned. She clenched her jaw, her voice breaking as she forced the words out. "You've made me feel." She reached down again, brushing her fingers against the child's cheek. The girl smiled faintly, unafraid now. The Empress's breath trembled. "Human," she whispered, her lips shaking with a truth she had buried for too long. "I cannot feel my heart anymore. Did you steal it?" The man raised his eyes, meeting hers. His chest was tight, but his voice did not waver. "No, Majesty, it was always there. You only forgot where to look." The words struck her like thunder. She stood in silence, staring at the father and daughter as if they were a mirror showing her what she had lost. The Empress turned slowly toward her throne, but for the first time, the throne looked small compared to the warmth of two fragile lives standing before her. Her hand hovered near her chest, her breath uneven. She felt the great hall was empty now. Only shadows clung to the walls, and the echo of the child's laugh still lingered like a ghost. The Empress stood in silence, her golden eyes fixed on the human father and his daughter. For the first time in years, her court had seen her shaken. For the first time, she herself had felt weak. But when she looked at the girl's small face, she did not see weakness. She saw light. "Come," the Empress said softly, a command and a plea at once. The guards escorted the man and his daughter not to the dungeons, as they feared, but to the private chambers of the Empress herself. The corridors were long, cold, filled with carvings of victories, battles, and endless conquests. Every wall screamed of power, but the girl only clung tighter to her father's hand, her little steps dragging, when the heavy doors closed behind them. The Empress turned. Her cloak fell silent against the floor. The golden crown on her head shimmered under the torchlight, but it no longer felt like a crown, it felt like a chain. She faced the man, her voice quiet but sharp. "Tell me your story." The man hesitated. He had no reason to trust her, but he looked into her eyes and saw something he had not expected. Not rage, not hunger for blood, but a question. A wound. He bowed his head. "We had a home once, before your wars reached it. My daughter was born strong, but the fire of battle took her leg, her strength. I carried her through the ruins, across the ashes. Since then, I've served where I could, just to keep her alive." His voice shook, not from fear, but from pain carried too long. "She has nothing, Majesty, nothing but me. That is why I danced with her tonight. For her, just once, to feel alive again." The Empress felt her chest tighten. His words stabbed her like knives because she knew he spoke the truth. His suffering was born from her conquests, her endless wars. She had destroyed their world. And yet here he stood, offering love instead of hate. The little girl tilted her head, her eyes soft as she looked up at the towering Empress. "You're not scary," she whispered again. "You're just lonely." The Empress's lips parted. The words hit her harder than a battlefield strike. Lonely. She, who had armies, planets, riches beyond imagination, yet a child could see her emptiness. Her golden eyes burned. But she forced herself to ask, "Why do you not hate me?" The man met her gaze. His answer was simple. "Because hate cannot feed her. Love can." The chamber fell silent again. Outside, the whispers had already begun. The nobles were speaking. In hushed voices, their fear twisting into anger. The generals muttered in dark corners, calling me Empress weak, poisoned by a human. Plots were already growing like weeds in the shadows, but inside her chamber, the Empress ignored them. She turned to the man and his daughter, and her voice trembled with something no one had ever heard from her before. "If I gave you my empire," she asked softly, almost to herself, "would you teach me how to dance like you?" The man froze. He thought he had misheard. His daughter blinked, tilting her head in confusion. But the Empress's eyes held no joke. She was serious. Deadly serious. For the first time in her reign, the Empress of 1,000 worlds admitted she no longer knew what power meant. And in that moment, her heart whispered something even she was afraid to believe. Maybe this human and his fragile. The Empress's request echoed through the chamber. See me not as an empress, but as a woman who has forgotten how to feel. The words had stunned the human father. His daughter looked up at him with wide eyes as if asking silently, "Can we trust her?" For a moment, he thought of refusing. Teaching her meant danger. The nobles already whispered of betrayal. The generals sharpened their knives in the dark. But then, he looked at the Empress, her golden eyes no longer burning with cold pride, but flickering with something fragile. Something human. And so, he agreed. That night, behind closed doors, the palace changed. The orchestra did not play. There were no nobles to watch, no soldiers to command. The Empress stood barefoot on the polished floor, her heavy cloak and crown removed. For the first time in decades, she looked less like a ruler and more like a woman stripped of her armor. The human bowed slightly, then reached out his hand. "It begins here," he said softly. The Empress hesitated. No one had ever dared to guide her. She was always the one giving orders. Her fingers trembled as she placed them in his step by step. He taught her at first. It was awkward. Her movements were stiff, her body used to marching armies, not swaying to rhythm. She stepped too hard, her golden bracelets clinking like chains. She frowned, frustrated, anger flickering in her eyes. "Again," she demanded. But the man shook. His head, not with anger, with care. Dance is not about control, it is about trust. The word trust lingered in the air like forbidden fire. Trust was something she had buried long ago. She looked at him, her voice sharp. "And why should I trust a servant?" He held her gaze calmly. "Because for once in your life, Majesty, you must let someone else lead." The silence stretched. No general had ever spoken to her like that and lived. Yet instead of fury, something strange happened. The corner of her lips twitched, not in anger, but in the faintest smile. She let him guide her again. This time, her steps softened. Slowly, she began to move with him. The child clapped her hands, laughing. "You're dancing." The Empress froze at the sound of laughter. Not mocking laughter, not fearful laughter, pure joy. Her heart ached, remembering her own child's laughter, long buried in memory. For a moment, she almost faltered, but the man steadied her. "Don't look back," he whispered. "Look only at now." She nodded faintly. And then, for the first time, the Empress danced. It was clumsy, imperfect, nothing like the grace of her throne. But with each step, she felt her chest loosen, her heart beating against a cage of steel. The girl laughed again, circling them, her weak legs trying to follow. For that moment, the three of them were not Empress, servant, and child. They were just a family. But outside, the storm grew. The generals met in secret. The scarred one spoke with venom. "Our Empress dances while the empire burns. She has lost her strength. If we do not act, she will destroy us all." The others agreed. Their whispers turned into plans. Their plans turned into rebellion, and the first target of their wrath was the human and his daughter. But inside the chamber, unaware of the growing danger, the Empress took a final step, her chest rising with breath she did not know she still had. Her golden eyes shone, not with fire, but with something new. Hope. The man released her hand, bowing low. "You have learned your first step, Majesty." The Empress did not answer. Instead, she looked at him with a gaze that made the air heavy. Her lips parted, her voice almost trembling. "Human, what have you done to me?" The storm finally broke. The generals did not whisper anymore. They marched with steel in their eyes and fire in their hearts. To them, the Empress was no longer a goddess of war. She was a woman who had grown weak, and weakness could not rule an empire. On the morning of the grand ceremony, the palace was filled with shadows. Soldiers moved in secret. Nobles traded fearful glances. Rumors spread through the empire. The Empress has lost her edge. The throne will fall. But when the hall doors opened, the galaxy saw something no one expected. The Empress did not walk in with her generals. She did not enter with her nobles or her crown. She entered holding the hand of a little girl. The human child's steps were slow, trembling, but the father guided her gently. And on her other side, the Empress herself bent. Lo, her golden hand steadying the child. The court gasped. The crowd beyond the palace screens gasped. An empire of millions watched as their Empress, cold, untouchable, terrifying, walked not as a conqueror, but as a protector. The generals stood frozen, their rebellion on their lips. But their voices died in their throats when the Empress stepped into the center of the hall and turned to face her people. Her golden eyes burned, but not with rage. They burned with something far stronger. "I have ruled you with fear," she said, her voice echoing across the vast chamber. "I built my throne with blood. I thought strength was steel. I thought love was weakness. But today," she looked at the child beside her. "A human girl reminded me that strength is not fear. It is love," the nobles murmured in shock. The soldiers shifted, uncertain. The generals clenched their jaws. Then, before the galaxy, the Empress did something no one in 1,000 worlds had seen. She reached for the human father's hand, and together, they danced. It was not perfect. Her steps were slow, his guiding steady. The child laughed, joining them, her weak legs carrying her in small, brave motions. But the hall, the empire, the galaxy all fell silent, watching. The Empress who once crushed stars in her fists was now showing them something stronger than war. And for the first time in living memory, the people watching across screens did not cheer in fear. They cheered in hope. The scarred general stepped forward, shouting, "This is weakness. This will destroy us all." But the Empress turned her golden gaze on him. And this time, it was not cold. It was blazing. "No," she said firmly. "This will save us." The hall thundered with her words. The generals lowered their heads. The nobles bent their knees. The rebellion died before it could breathe. The Empress raised the child's hand high, her voice carrying across the stars. "From this day forward, the empire will not be built on fear, but on life. No more war, no more chains. From this day, we will live." The people roared in approval. Across worlds, tears fell. The galaxy had never seen their Empress like this. As the cheers filled the hall, the Empress leaned down, whispering softly, so only the father and daughter could hear, "You gave me back my heart. And for that, you are no longer my servant. You are my family." The human bowed his head, his chest tight with emotion. The daughter smiled, her small hand still clutched in the Empress's. For the first time in her reign, the Empress felt alive, not as a ruler, not as a conqueror, but as a woman, as a mother, as someone who finally remembered what it meant to be human. And as the galaxy watched in awe, the Empress thought to herself, "I had power over stars.